Okay. So, very good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everyone, and depending on where you are, and a very warm welcome to today's session on how to build synergies between the three Rio Conventions. So, I'm Stefania Perrin from Rio Impact, and I have the pleasure of moderating this session today. So, this webinar is part of the Joint Capacity Building Program initiated by the Secretariats of the three Rio Conventions, that is the UNFCCC, the CBD, and the UNCCD. So this is the fifth session in our ongoing webinar series, which began in August last year. So far, we've explored integrated planning of national strategies and policies, assessing and mobilizing finance for synergistic projects, on the role of local and indigenous knowledge in supporting synergies. And our last webinar, which happened a few weeks ago, well, we looked at how to build synergies in national adaptation plans. So the overall aim of the Joint Capacity Building Program, it is to strengthen individual, institutional, and systemic capacity to support integrated approaches to climate change, biodiversity, and land management, ultimately contributing to the objectives of the Rio Conventions and the Sustainable Development Goals. So today, for our fifth session, we are going to focus on building synergies in national biodiversity plans, their implementation, and related financing solutions. So, as many of you know, national biodiversity strategies and action plans, commonly named as NBSAPs, they are the principal instrument for implementing the CBD at the national level. By integrating the objectives of all three Rio Conventions into NBSAPs, countries can enhance coherence, efficiency, and impact in their environmental governance. Today, we'll explore practical approaches and real-world examples of how such integration can be achieved, including country case studies and insights on how biodiversity finance can act as a catalyst for synergy. Before we begin, a few housekeeping. So please ensure your microphone remains muted unless you are invited to speak to avoid background noises. Today's session is being recorded, and both the recording and presentation materials for today will be made available on the UNFCCC event page. The link for the page will be shared shortly in the chat. And lastly, by participating in this event, you are providing your consent to the recording. So let me just walk you through our agenda for today. So we're going to have opening remarks, which will be followed by a keynote presentation on building synergies between Rio Conventions in NBSAP. Then we're going to move into country case studies, where we are going to look at how interventions and on integrating Rio Conventions in an NBSAP. And then we're going to move to a panel discussion where we're going to look at biodiversity finance as a catalyst for synergies between Rio Conventions. And then we are going to move to a very interactive session where you will have opportunity for questions and answers. And then we're going to move to an interactive quiz. And lastly, we're going to close with closing remarks. So before we dive into the substance of today's discussion, I have a pleasure of inviting Mr. Alejandro Kilpatrick for opening remarks. Alejandro, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Steph, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to our participants. Thank you for making the time to attend this very interesting webinar. My name is Alejandro Kilpatrick. I'm the manager for the Capacity Building Subdivision here at the UNFCCC Secretariat, and it's my great pleasure to provide these welcoming remarks on behalf of the three Rio Convention Secretariats. As mentioned, we are doing this joint capacity building program. It's a very good example of very concrete collaboration between the secretariats of the three Rio Conventions, the CBD, UNCCD, and UNFCCC. This global joint capacity building program also it's an effort to also hear the call for materializing synergies that we've heard in different fora. More recently, last year, with where the three Rio Conventions have their own COPs, and the issue of synergies came out very strongly, particularly in the CBD COP at Cali, where there was a very concrete request to examine how to move forward in synergies and also on how to work together on capacity building. There's a very clear decision which speaks to capacity building. So we're very happy that this joint capacity building program is also able to respond to those calls from parties. Similarly, the CCD also had strong calls for synergies, and more recently, the CBD organized here in Bonn before the SB sessions, a session on technical exchange on synergies. So I think it's evident that synergies are recognized as an important element for everyone, but now the challenge always is how to materialize them. And through this series of webinars, through the activities of the Joint Capacity Building Program, we strive to provide information, but also support so that our target audience, basically government representatives and other stakeholders, can not only understand what are the different instruments, but how can they be better integrated and how these synergies can be translated into action at the ground level. And today we will have very concrete country examples on how to do that, because I believe that synergies happen naturally at the territorial level, at the ecosystem level, at the community level. We just need to maybe work a bit more on how to better align the instruments, the plans, and this is been the objective of these webinars in the last editions, where we look at the specific instruments or the main instruments of the three conventions. Like Stefania mentioned it, the previous webinar focused on NAPs, the National Adaptation Plans, which are one of the key instruments under UNFCCC. There have been also webinars on the NDCs, but now we want to see another main instrument, which is the NBSAP. We will also have a webinar on the land degradation neutrality targets. So to cover all the instruments and how these instruments can and should better align, and how others are supporting these efforts. For example, I'm very happy to see our colleague Eva from the NBSAP Accelerator Partnership, which is an initiative very similar to the NDC partnership, based also on an instrument. So, and both of them are working together, which is also very encouraging in terms of maximizing effectiveness and increasing support to countries, to developing countries in particularly. So having those instruments aligned, and we'll also hear from Panama, a very interesting and to me a model how this can be presented, the alignment and integration of the several instruments. So there are examples out there that can be done. So our intention is to hear from these examples and see how we can replicate them and take them to the next level, to the project program development level. So we're very happy to have you here, and without further ado, I will hand it back to Steph, because I think we're all very eager to hear a keynote presentation and then the country case studies. So thank you, and hope you enjoy and you find this webinar useful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alejandro, for your opening remarks. So, and without further ado, I would like now to give the floor to Eva Doria from NBSAP Accelerator Partnership for her keynote address. Eva, the floor is yours.
Thank you much, Stefania, and thank you, colleagues. Can you hear me well, loud and clear?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, well, good morning, good afternoon to all, wherever you are. As has been said, I'm Eva Gurria, and it's a privilege to join this timely discussion, as Alejandro just said, on synergies between the Rio Conventions. I represent the NBSAP Accelerator Partnership. So this is the country-led initiative that supports countries in implementing their national biodiversity strategies and action plans, or NBSAPs, in ways that align with climate and land priorities. And this partnership was launched at CBD COP15 and is co-chaired by Germany and Colombia and hosted by UNDP, UNEP, and the CBD Secretariat. Next slide, please. So why are we talking about synergies right now? And let me start with the why. Why do we need to talk about synergies now more than ever? And I think Alejandro alluded to pretty much a lot of the things I'll be talking about in my keynote, but it is clear working in silos is no longer an option. And fragmented action is not only inefficient, as we know, but also really ineffective. And the crises we face, climate change, biodiversity loss, and land degradation, are deeply interconnected. So if we are to design resilient, impactful policies, we must really treat these issues as part of a single system. Integrated approaches are not just nice to have. Now it is clear to all that they are really essential. So next slide, please. So what are we seeing from global mandates calling for integration? And Alejandro also alluded to this in his opening remarks. Well, we're seeing the global policy environment is evolving in this direction, in the direction of synergies. So at SBs this year in Bonn, parties recognize the need to better incorporate biodiversity into NDCs and APs. And at CBD COP16, parties emphasize strengthening cooperation between the 3 Rio Conventions and encourage countries to pursue alignment, implementation of the GBF, the Paris Agreement, the UNCCD land degradation neutrality targets. So we're seeing that the guidance is already there. Now it's about enabling countries to deliver. Of course, easier said than done. Next slide, please. So what is this moment of synergy that we're talking about in the NBSAP journey? Well, we have to ask ourselves, when is the right time to be thinking about synergies? And the answer is throughout the entire NBSAP cycle. From target setting and updating to implementation, monitoring, and reporting. But it is especially critical during the design phase, when countries set national targets and align with development priorities, such as the SDGs. So if the why is not embedded early on, coordination is really harder to build later. Next slide, please. So what are we learning from countries? But let me share what we're seeing on the ground. Colombia is a brilliant example. The government aligned its NBSAP and NDC through joint planning exercises with sectoral ministries. And this wasn't just a biodiversity policy process. It was a whole of government effort, very impressive. And in places like Sierra Leone, I'm very proud to say through the support of the SAP Accelerator Partnership and the NDC Partnership, we're seeing a cross-ministerial group that now meets every 10 days to align climate and biodiversity implementation. So these examples show that when coordination is intentional, it becomes catalytic. And the word here is intentional, not ad hoc. Next slide, please. So from the Accelerator Partnership, we also have certain tools. And we support countries through 2 key instruments or services. The first is our matchmaking mechanism, through which we help surface country needs and match them with technical and financial partners for implementation of NBSAPs. And the second is our facilitator program, through which we embed experts in country or in regions and technical centers to help ministries align NBSAPs, NDCs, and other relevant strategies and frameworks and actors also. While, of course, helping surface country requests that come to our matchmaking mechanism. So for us, this direct, embedded support is what really makes integration happen in practice. Next slide, please. So I want to share these insights and lessons from the Pacific. I just came back from a workshop in Samoa with the 14 countries in this region. And I learned that Vanuatu is developing a monitoring system that aligns biodiversity and climate adaptation outcomes. And in Samoa and Tonga, that are not yet part of the NBSAP Accelerator Partnership family, but I hope they will become soon members. Well, we're seeing that countries are working towards harmonized reporting under multiple multilateral environmental agreements, so various MEAs, and integrating biodiversity and climate planning at the national level. So here I want to share that SIDS are not just vulnerable to the impacts of inaction, but I want to highlight that they are showing leadership in cross-convention alignment. Next slide, please. So there's a lot of global guidance that is already available to support countries, and a range of tools already exist. So for example, we have the GIZ ISD WWF policy checklist on effectively delivering on climate and nature. And I found this to be extremely useful. As are UNEPs and CBDs, the UNFCCC thematic papers. There's tons of technical papers that are super informative. And the Nature for Climate guidance for including nature and NDCs. So these are just a few of some of the available tools, but these all provide practical steps. The idea is that these are not abstract framework or ideas, but they offer concrete ways for countries to align monitoring indicators, institutional coordination, financing streams, and joint implementation mechanisms. So let me take two examples from the GIZ publication, and I'm happy to see some GIZ colleagues here today in the call. Well, from the UK, we're seeing that they developed a cross-government structure and guidance to support implementation of climate and nature strategies. So this cross-government structure is key. And then in China, we're seeing something similar with biodiversity climate linkages that are embedded in their national strategy. So on the one hand, they have clear mandates at the highest level, and then joint implementation through coordinated delivery at the local level. But really most notably in the case of China is their 5-year plan, which integrates all 3 Rio Conventions, the CBD, the UNFCCC, and the UNCCD, into one single national development planning framework or instrument. So these country examples reinforce that integration is both a political opportunity, but also, of course, a technical opportunity. So next slide, please. So what is my vision for the future? Well, ultimately, we've come to understand that synergies are not just about saving resources and avoiding duplication of efforts. They're about amplifying impact. So that means it's about getting more value for every dollar invested, for every target set, for every team mobilized around climate, around land, around nature. And as we move from pilot phase to scale up, from the buzzword to the implementation, I also want to offer the NBSAP Accelerator Partnership, because we're committed to helping countries move beyond ad hoc coordination to something that is more durable, to system-level integration. And then the next slide is my last slide. Well, I want to thank you all for your time and attention. I hope that today offered a clear window into how synergies between biodiversity, climate, and land can be more than a buzzword. They can be the engine behind lasting transformation. And let me leave you with this. Alignment isn't about complexity. Quite the contrary, it's about clarity. It's about governments and secretariats speaking with one voice, not 3, and donors investing with greater purpose, and communities across the 3 Rio Conventions feeling the real-world impact of joined-up policies. Because if we want real change, we must really stop managing nature in parts, in silos, and start working as one system, because there really is only one planet. So I've shared some of the tools, and so did Alejandro. The tools are there. The political will is building, as we know. The NBSAP Accelerator Partnership stands ready to help countries turn ambition into aligned action. So let's move from coordination to convergence, and from convergence to impact. Thank you very much, and I look forward to your reflections and further discussion. Back to you, Stefania.
Thank you very much, Eva, for those amazing words and very insightful presentation on why synergies matter, and also for telling us about the amazing work being done by the NBSAP Accelerator. So as mentioned earlier, the slides will be uploaded on the UNFCCC event page, and the link to the page can be found in the chat. And already, if you have any question for Eva, please don't hesitate to put your questions in the chat already. And an important question which is often raised is how to actually build synergies. So a concept that can sometimes feel a little bit abstract, but today we aim to unpack what synergy looks like in practice. So let us now turn to our country case studies. And first, we are delighted to hear from Melanie Acosta-Chin from the Ministry of Environment in Panama. So Melanie is an environmental engineer with experience in climate change. She has led the development of Panama's greenhouse gas inventories and the submission of reports to the UNFCCC, such as the first biennial transparency report. She currently serves as head of climate action at the Ministry of Environment of Panama. So without further ado, Melanie, the floor is yours.
Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Thank you for the space to share the experience and that we have in Panama, trying to show how synergy could be, because there's no specific plan, there's no any specific manual that helps the country to establish a specific a big plan. So it's dependent on the national circumstances of each country. So I will share my screen. So, you are going to help me with that. Perfect. It's the same one, so perfect. So right now, Panama is working in our national in our nature pledge is the main tool that we are going to present to the three conventions to align the commitments, not just in climate, but in biodiversity and desertification. So as you already know, we start this journey in 1992 in the same city, but sadly, in the last years, in the last 30 years, we have been working in silos through three different secretariats. So next slide. Even if Panama ratifies the three conventions and also the Sustainable Development Goals, the way everything has been structured had led us to have three different themes. Even the three focal points of each convention, even if it's in the same ministry, we are in three different directions in the same building. And as you already know, even if you are in the same building, the communication is not easy when you have different structures. So now we are trying to change that. Next one. And we are trying to present our nature pledge. What is our nature pledge? It's a comprehensive commitment to address the synergy and ambitious manners regarding climate change, biodiversity, and desertification. The scope for us is really clear. It's not going to be a specific operational and it's not going to be a document with operational details. You're going to establish the specific goals that we are going to include in our NDC or NBSAP and or LDN. And the main objectives of this exercise is to compile in a clear and measurable way our commitments, because in the past, We present 3 different documents prepared by 3 different teams with 3 different baselines and 3 different using different tools to establish that different goals. So we are really working to establish and identify synergies, facilitate the joint implementation, identify the small investments, and to facilitate the better understanding. So we're really working not just for the technical team to understand what is right on that different documents, but our society and the policymakers and the academy could understand which ones are the commitments of Panama in environmental manners. We are also trying to align the financial flows with environmental and climate change goals compiled in a document. So that would help us in the case of our Ministry of Finance to understand which ones are the priorities in environment for Panama. Next one. So Panama right now is in like a momentum because we need to update our LDN or NBSAP. The last time that we present that was in 2018. And even if we present our NDC in 2024, the second one, we are going to present our NDC 3.0. Why? Because when we start the reporting and the development of the NDC 2, was really close when the outcomes of the global stocktake were presented. So we already have that process started. So we have to finish the reporting, even if it takes like a long process. Like to prepare an NDC is not really easy, as more of you already know. But in the case we are going to present and update our NDC, trying to align the different commitments that we have with the other 2 conventions. So right now, instead of have 3 different public consultations, 3 different task force or technical team to prepare the 3 different documents, we are working together right now, preparing a country statement, trying to include the different sensitive approaches as gender, youth, the institutional arrangements, also just transition, and we are going to, the next one, we are going to present 3 annex, 1 annex for each convention, working with the specific indicators and monitoring goals, focusing in GHG emission reductions, soil degradation reductions and measures, the number of hectares of forest that we are going to preserve and restore. That is the main goal that are going to secure to have the synergy. So right now we have 3 different commitments in 3 different documents with 3 different baselines. So at the end, we have a specific goal for in the NDC, another one in the LDN and the NBSAP, and we have a lot of incurrence with each one. So right now we are working in a single goal that responds to the 3 conventions in the case of restoration. Next one. So obviously we have finds a lot of benefits in this process. Obviously optimization of finance, alignment in international commitments, because we have 3 different documents not saying the same thing. So we are trying to change that. The collaboration between key players or stakeholders, trying to establish alliance and multi-sectoral commitments, expanding the ambition. We find out that in the case of the NDC, we were not considered some commitments that were included in the last NBSAP and the LDN. And if we include that in just a one goal, we could find and expand our ambition. The implementation, efficiency, and improvements are really are going to be the main focus of this document, and the narrative is going to be the same. And obviously the socioeconomic resilience. Next one. So this is going to be the structure proposal of our document. We are going to have a political statement that is going to be signed by the cabinet of ministers and the president. We are going to take sensitive approaches that I already told you, the governance, gender, just transition, youth, that is a cross-cutting thematics that we see in each convention. And then we have 3 annex, the NDC 3.0, the NBSAP, and the LDN 2.0 also. And the vehicle that the Panama decides to present the adaptation communication is our NDC. So we also need to update our NDC. Next one. So the milestone that we have until today, we start in August of last year to trying to think how we can change all the things that we are doing. We are working in with 3 different technical teams. We have 3 different financial mechanisms. We have 3 plans, 3 report, 3 of everything. And for a country, it's not possible to maintain the rhythm to report when you don't have the enough capacity building to secure a synergy. So the climate change direction take like the leadership to try to coordinate all this process, to communicate with the different technical teams and trying to change the way that we report. So we present in December, in November, we start with data analysis, trying to read which was presented before. In December, we present the structure proposal and we receive the political support. In Panama, we don't have like a national development plans. We have a government strategic plan. So the current president includes this document as part of the goals that he wants to establish through the administration. So it's included in that government strategic plan. In January, we established the task force, as I call them, because it's all the technical thing that is included in the process of reporting, monitoring, and the verification of different commitments, international commitments. In February, we start the alignment of commitments. In March, we start different dissemination with stakeholders and different working sessions. In April, we are going to we start prioritizing the commitments, and in May we have the first draft. Now we are trying to receive some recommendations from different stakeholders and alliance. So now we are working on that. Hopefully in July we're going to start the public consultation. Hopefully, and we are planning to present this in a National Assembly of the UN. So that's on my part. Thank you so much for the space. And sorry, I think I take more time than I supposed to take.
Thank you very much, Melanie. Your presentation was quite insightful. It's a very concrete example on how to build synergy. And thank you again for your time and for being with us today. We know that it's quite early in Panama, so thank you for your time. So without further ado, we move to our next country case study. So we're going to Mauritius this time. And we're going to welcome Mr. Manoj Bagchi, who is the president of Fondation Ressources et Nature, Foreigner. And Mr. Bagchi has over 30 years experience. For the past 30 years, he has dedicated his career to supporting economic operators in enhancing their performance and embracing sustainable practices. So as the chairman of Foreigner, he leads initiatives to protect biodiversity, foster climate change adaptation, and prevent land degradation. So since 2022, under his chairmanship, Foreigner has also been serving as the national focal point for Mauritius within the CEPF, Regional Implementation Team for Madagascar and the Indian Ocean Islands hotspot. So, Mr. Bagchi, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Stefania, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. I'll be trying. So I'm going to be someone who's going to be talking about the things which are more terre à terre, as we say, which are more down to earth. So hopefully it's going to be answering to your expectations. So let me try and find I'm sorry, I can't find it. I think you'll have to. Oh, you've shown it already. Thank you,
Yes.
Stefania. All right, great. All right, so I'm going to talk to you about what our foundation is doing in Mauritius and Rodrigues and in the Indian Ocean region. Next slide, please. So FORENA is a foundation which is incorporated in Mauritius and Rodrigues, but we are active in the Indian Ocean region, specifically of Seychelles, Madagascar, Comoro, and Mauritius. We're dedicated to biodiversity, conservation, adaptation to climate change, and prevention of land degradation, which goes into those three Rio Conventions. And we have a focus on ecosystem restoration, species conservation, ecosystem-based adaptation and education, and civil society empowerment. Next. As Stefania was saying, since 2022, we are part of a regional implementation team, which is overlooking the funding of the CEPF. For those who don't know, the CEPF is the Critical Ecosystem Partnership Fund, which is a fund which has been created by the World Bank, the UNGEF, the AFD, Agence Française de Développement, European Union, and which benefit from funds from the GCF, as well as the EU for our region here in Mauritius, Madagascar, Seychelles, and Comoro Islands. We have a project which is on over 10 years, started 2022, is going to finish at 2032 with something like $30 million at disposal. We are here to help CSOs access grants. So small grants are within $50,000 and large grants are above. So it can be $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, for example. We also ensure the alignment with the NBSAP of the various islands and the CEPF priorities, because we have an ecosystem profile which has been put in place after having discussed with all the stakeholders in all the countries. And we, of course, support monitoring and reporting of beneficiaries. Today, we have an organization which is in each of the islands, part of that regional implementation team. You can see those over there, and we are working together with the IUCN Netherlands. Next. All right, let me give you a few projects that are being done, which are in line with the NBSAP and the CEPF profile. So that would be, for example, an 11-hectare mountain, which is part of Port Louis. I don't know if you know where it is. It is the town, the main city of Mauritius, and the citadel, which you can see in the first picture right up there, which is a fort, and around it, it's a small hill, which is called a Petite Montagne, and it has something like 11 hectares of very degraded land. You can see the first picture on the left, which shows you how it was quite degraded by fires and erosion. And the idea was to recreate the thing. Today, if you look at the last picture on the right, this is what has been done within around 10 to 12 years. This is a sort of project that we are doing with the community, with the Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Agro-Industry, Tourism. So lots of stakeholders, private organizations like Rotary, and different ministries with the UNDP GEF small grants program as well. Next slide. Another type of project that we're doing is about reintegration of prisoners and vulnerable groups. So we've put in place a number of nurseries in various prisons in Mauritius and Rodrigues. Rodrigues is a small island which is part of Mauritius, 1.5 hour of plane from Mauritius. And we train these prisoners so that they are able to reintegrate society after having been there. So they are trained in how to do propagation of plants, how to manage a nursery, and we buy back those plants with them. You can look that they are those who are participating in the construction of everything. And the last picture on the right, you can see the sort of plants that we are producing. So sorry, it's okay. The plants are endemic plants. We have fruit trees and we have medicinal plants as well. Next slide. Another project which is in Rodrigues this time, so a small island, the side of Mauritius. Another type of project, again, nursery, different types of nursery, and again, production of here fruit trees, because this is going to go into an agroforestry project. So the government of Rodrigues is going to put a number of areas at the disposal of these prisoners so that they can replant fruit trees together with endemic trees to make an agroforestry project all around Rodrigues. So this is another type of project. The first one is reforestation completely. This one is agroforestry project with the same base nursery. Next. The third one is about empowerment and education of vulnerable groups. I don't know if you know, but we had a shipwreck incident. It was the Wakasho incident in Mauritius a few years back. And a lot of people lost their jobs or had a diminished income. So we had to find alternate livelihoods for them. And the idea was to identify a number of women who would be trained in a number of different skills. One of those, of course, is in production of plants through another type of nursery. Here, this nursery is completely movable. So everything is in wood, and we can remove the whole thing and no print of our passage in the area. The next slide. They've also learned how to produce a number of ways to enhance soil, the quality of soil. So here you can see the windrow composting pads. And the second picture from the left, this is another vermicomposting project. So they are being trained in soil enhancement together with the plantation, propagation of plants, and also in mangrove plantation. So these people are going to get jobs out of that. Next slide. Now let's go into the projects which are funded under the CEPF, the Critical Ecosystem Partnership Fund. So I've chosen 3 of the projects which are being funded. The first one is the Ebony Forest. It concerns the restoration of critical habitats for endemic flora and fauna, most particularly birds, and the removal of alien species, whether they're plants or wild animals. Wild animals in Mauritius and Rodrigues are mostly cats, nothing dangerous. So the idea is to build in-house capacity for bird conservation in an area of 10 hectares. There are a lot of reforestation work, which has already been started with Ebony Forest, and lots of public awareness raising, lots of training in reforestation techniques. And the third thing is about outreach for private sector fundraising activities. So what we've tried to show is a bit of alignment with the NBSAP for Mauritius and the CBD, the UNFCCC, etc. So you can see that these projects are very well aligned with these various conventions. Next slide. The other project is the Fernet. So if Ebony Forest is in the southwest of the country, this one is the southeast of the country, and it's called Fernet. It's a very nice reserve where there's lots of work which has been done with the GEF Small Grants Program and the government of Mauritius. And they have decided to go a bit further on what they're doing. So the idea is to go for natural regeneration of watershed forest and to try ecosystem-based adaptation programs. So the idea is to eliminate, of course, alien species, then to promote sustainable land management through agroecology and climate-smart agriculture. And the idea is also to be a showcase for what can be done, not just for conservation purposes, but also in agroecological proposals. So again, relations to the various Rio Conventions. Next slide. The third project that I chose for you is the soil enhancement project. You saw the ladies in a few slides back where they were learning how to develop composting, vermicomposting, algae composting and all that. Well, this is the company which is doing that, Nature Techniques. We've funded them as well. So the first two projects that I've shown you were funded at large grants. So these are more or less $280,000. This one is a small grant. It's a $50,000 project. So the idea is to really show how we can enhance soil health with various different types of processes. So two things in this project. The first is to reduce chemical usage and to increase and foster soil fertility. And the second one is capacity building for local communities. So they are testing the products in various agroforestry farms. And the idea is to try and decrease environmental degradation and promote diversity conservation. So again, aligned with the CBD and the other two Rio Conventions. Next slide. I think I'm almost at the end now. So the idea of the foundation is to show that whatever we've been doing, whether it's with our own funds or with the funds of the CEPF, the idea was to, one, is to ensure that we are abiding to the CBD goals, mainly species and ecosystems, the UNFCCC goals, climate adaptation and carbon sinks, the UNCCD goals about land restoration, and we directly support all the 5 Republic of Mauritius NBSAP strategic goals within all those projects. So as you can see, this is really down-to-earth projects. We are helping people get empowered. We are proposing alternate livelihood while trying to commit to all the NBSAP strategic goals established by our country. And with this, I think we are the last slide. And this is from Florida. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vadji, for showcasing the concrete examples of foreigners' work with projects that align with Rio Conventions. So thank you very much for that. And without further ado, we are now going to move into our panel discussion, which will focus on the role of biodiversity finance as a catalyst for synergies. And as mentioned earlier, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to put your questions in the chat already, and we'll take those questions up during our question and answer session. So first, for our panel discussion, we're going to hear from Fernanda Montero. So Fernanda is the climate change specialist in UNDP's Biofin initiative and supports countries to strengthen financing solutions that have both nature and climate benefits. So Fernanda has over 13 years of experience working on environmental finance within the Ministry of Finance of Mexico, National Commission for Protected Areas, UNDP, and GIZ. She holds a bachelor's degree in international relations. So, Fernanda, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon to everyone. And thank you to the Rio Conventions Joint Capacity Building Program for this invitation. So I would very briefly like to share in this context of thinking of synergies within the three conventions, what is Biofin and what we do and how we can support synergies within the three conventions. So Biofin is a global initiative from UNDP that started in 2012 with 10 countries, but now grew very large and has over 90 countries in implementation. So we have learned a lot on how to work with countries to design financing solutions for biodiversity. And very briefly, what we do is through a very straightforward methodology, we help countries analyze their policy and institutions related to biodiversity. Then we help them review what the expenditure is at a national level from all sources, public, private, and international. And the next step is actually very relevant for this panel because we also help them cost the NBSAP. How much is it going to cost to implement the NBSAP at a country level and what sources are needed? After this assessment is done, we also support countries in developing their biodiversity finance plans. So this is where we screen what are the opportunities for financing solutions and afterwards help them design tailored financing solutions to meet their country's goals and the CBD Convention goals for biodiversity. So we've been working with many countries in this and we have leveraged over $1.6 billion to date. And we also learned from the beginning that there was a link that was undeniable between climate change and biodiversity. One very important part of our project is that we started working with the ministries of finance, and they're part of our steering committee at a country level. So this 12 years ago was very innovative because ministries of finance would usually not be involved in nature. They were just starting to learn and get involved around climate issues. So we found, and we still find, that climate change is a key entry point also for biodiversity work at a national level that can help us boost the biodiversity finance agenda within countries, not only with the ministries of finance, but also with the financial sector, banks, private companies, among others. So we have seen that this synergy, when we're thinking about very pragmatic solutions, is very relevant to work at a country level. And we also find, for example, that investments in nature protection can help us deliver almost 30% of the global mitigation targets at a global level. So our focus is really on how to help countries design and implement financing solutions that will help meet biodiversity goals, but are linked with other climate goals. And in this sense, well, I would like to mention some examples that we're working on. For example, in Mexico at the subnational level, we're working on state funds to channel local carbon taxes toward nature-based solutions and payment for environmental services and other solutions that have this double impact in climate and biodiversity. And we're also seeing how through the current voluntary carbon markets, we can also add the biodiversity credits. So in the same area, we can also leverage more resources to aim to meet mitigation targets, but also biodiversity targets through more funding, but in the same area of intervention. Another example I would like to mention, or work stream within the Biofin initiative, is the work on harmful subsidies. And I think this one is very relevant for the 3 conventions. So we also help and support countries map what are the subsidies. It can be fossil fuels, agriculture subsidies that are harmful for biodiversity. We help them with identification and screening. We also help them redesign and green them so they stop being harmful, and restructure the programs or the process in which the money is being allocated in countries. We have now 23 countries working on harmful subsidies, and this is a good example that meets or hits 3 convention goals. The CBD, because it's making harmful subsidies, specifically in agriculture, a bit more friendly with biodiversity by phasing out harmful incentives or practices. It also helps phase out fossil fuels in agricultural impact payments, which drives down emissions. And it also helps promote land conversion or sustainable farming that contribute to land degradation. So we have a guidance or a workbook within our webpage. I will be happy to share it in the chat in case you're interested, and looking forward to hear from you and your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fernanda, for this presentation. And without further ado, being very mindful about time, I would like to give the floor to Ludwig Diagre from Rio Impact. So Ludwig is the founder of Rio Impact, which is a consulting firm specialized on sustainable finance solutions for nature and climate, and building synergies between Rio Conventions at the level of planning processes, project design, and financing mechanism. So Ludwig, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, dear Stefania. Great to be with you today. Thanks, Fernanda, for mentioning the important work of Biofin. Today, I'd like to just share a few messages with you on, or food for thoughts, let's say, for our discussion on how biodiversity finance and biodiversity finance plans could be catalysts for synergies between Rio Conventions. I'll be brief because I want us to spend enough time for the question and answer session. But my first idea I wanted to share with you is, now we have those biodiversity finance plans being shaped in many countries. Why don't we use them, as tools to prioritize cost-effective interventions, as platforms, to address financing trade-offs, and to align national budgets and national financing instruments and external financing instruments, international financing sources, private financing sources, with the biodiversity, climate, and land restoration goals. So we could use those processes as platforms to reinforce synergies. Another idea I'd like to share, building on what Fernanda just said about the support they provide to state local funds, is about the very important tool, the so-called conservation trust funds, the CTFs. Conservation trust funds are somehow national biodiversity funds. They exist in more than 70 countries in the world. And oftentimes they are a really critical source of financing for biodiversity conservation and ecosystem restoration at country level. And they have helped countries mobilize long-term funding. The CTFs oftentimes build local ownership, and they channel finance directly to the ground, to local projects. And often in ways that can serve multiple objectives, for topics like forest restoration, ecosystem-based adaptation, climate smart agriculture, biodiversity conservation, among others. But to truly drive synergies, we have to think on how to adapt, reform some of those CTFs. Those conservation trust funds would need to be more intentionally designed or adapted to support the delivery of Synergies and to support the achievement of the goals of the 3 Rio Conventions. So that may mean, for example, reforming, adapting some of those conservation trust funds, but this is also valid for other domestic funds. You know, you have many countries with national climate funds, national agricultural development funds, or those domestic funds, you know, they could open new funding windows possibly that reflect integrated national priorities, and that would also encourage spending across sectors and agencies in a synergistic manner. So either adapting, reforming existing funding windows, or creating new funding modalities that really serve the purpose of Synergies. Another important topic, I think, is how can we build incentives? Incentives that could be built at the project level, for example, and rewarding proposals that demonstrate joint benefits for climate, biodiversity, and land. And this way, thanks to those incentives, then Synergies can become financially attractive. And building incentives could be done at different levels for different types of instruments. Within the context of conservation trust funds, surely, but also in the context of other domestic financing mechanisms, and in the context of international funding mechanisms as well. The GEF, the Global Environmental Facility, is already an interesting instrument that has shaped some forms of incentives for integrated projects. Probably we could build on those approaches to reinforce the incentives aspect of building Synergies. Last idea I wanted to share before our discussion is the topic of how can we scale up private sector investment in nature and for Synergies. And you've got great example of impact funds today that exist, like the Land Degradation Neutrality Fund, for example, that already go finance projects with key aspects of Synergies, supporting land degradation neutrality, but also climate and biodiversity targets. Like, how can we scale this up? And how can we measure it? You know, how can we measure impact? So I think there's a call to be done to also incentivize and support those impact funds to develop the metrics that will help them also monitor and report better on their impacts for climate, biodiversity, and land at the same time. So in short, I see really the biodiversity finance plans, but also the NBSAPs processes as key opportunities, as potential platforms at national level to aggregate the goodwill and to help key stakeholders, public-private stakeholders, to meet and design the key financing solutions that will deliver on Synergies, that will be designed, those solutions, those financing instruments, in a way that they can deliver land, climate, and biodiversity benefits in a coherent manner. So that's what I wanted to share with you. And now back to you, dear Stefania.
Thank you very much. So we now do the question and answer session. So please feel free to raise your virtual hand or to just post your questions in the chat, and we will take them up. So anybody would like to go first, please feel free. So anybody would like to go, please just don't hesitate. If you want further information from our different speakers on a particular matter that has been raised during the different presentations, please feel free. Yes, Eva.
Thank you very much, Stefania. This is a question to some of our speakers based on some of the questions I also read in the chat, which was this idea about designing projects to deliver on a particular convention and then retrofitting for the projects to deliver on others. So I was eager to hear from our presenters their experiences with this planning cycle in the design of some of the projects. Well, Panama was very clear. I wonder if others want to share any ideas of, what they've seen in the journey, because what we're finding is precisely questions from countries about, how to bring it together in the journey. What happens if they're already working on implementation? how can they bring them together at that point in the journey? So this is an open question to all, and it just doesn't have to be just panelists. I know there's other colleagues in the call who have also written extensively about this. Over, thank you.
Thank you, Eva. So any of our panelists would like to take the floor for that? Yes, Manoj?
Yeah, I think the question of whether we're retrofitting or not is interesting, but I don't see any issue with that, in fact. So you see what we've done is we have calls for proposal, but before the calls for proposals, there have been an ecosystem profile, which was prepared for each country. It took a few years to prepare that. And it's based on all the stakeholders, government, international donors, NGOs, CSOs, private sector. So I think we have taken in consideration the number of ideas and advices from everyone. System profile is prepared, and we call for proposals according to that ecosystem profile because we have set up a number of targets. I don't know if it's okay.
Yeah. I think we lost you for a few seconds on the last part.
What I'm saying is, when we make calls for proposals, of course there are beneficiaries, potential beneficiaries who are already working on a number of things, and so we choose them because they are already working. And there are others who are going to get interested because we've said we want you to do projects in that or this field or in that area. So I guess both of them work. Sometimes it may be retrofitting because we are going for projects which are already there. And sometimes I think we give ideas to others to go for projects which they didn't think about. So I think these two have to work together.
Thank you very much, Manoj. So any of our presenters would like also to reply to Eva's queries?
Stefania, I see there is an interesting question in the chat from David I think that's for Melanie. He's asking, for Panama, have you agreed on a set of indicators or criteria for judging success before the convention annexes?
Okay.
Yes, thank you for the question. In our case of Panama, we are trying to consolidate the nature pledge like in existing national monitoring frameworks. We are not trying to create new one. We already invest a lot of time, resources, and we have a good monitoring system. In the case of restoration, we have the system of monitoring of the restoration and the conservation in one of our directions. So we are trying to use that system to secure the monitoring of the success of the goals. The main indicator that we are going to work together is going to be the amount of hectares that are going to be restored, protect, and are going to have a sustainable manner. This is going to be the main indicator that are going to be together. Like if Panama is committed to restore this amount of hectares, what percentage is going to be in key areas of biodiversity, which one are going to be in land degraded areas. So we are going to work using the map of degradation that we present to the UNCCD, and actually one of our goals is to identify the key areas of biodiversity. We should think sometimes we could think that the only key areas of biodiversity is going to be in the protected areas, but in the case of Panama, as we are a really a small country with a interesting climate, we also have key areas of biodiversity in other parts that could be in private areas. So we are trying to identify that, but we are working from existing systems. We are not trying to create a new thing. And also, this is the main idea of this process, to work with the team together, identify in which cases we could merge some information. The other indicator obviously is going to be to maintain the capacity that the country have to absorb more emissions than the ones that we emit domestically. So the GHG inventory is going to be a great tool to monitor that progress. So even if we still need to develop, because we are in developing country, a country in developing, we know that we still not find the peak of our emissions. That is going to happen maybe between 2030, 35 and 2040. So even if we need to still develop, and obviously we are going to emit, we are trying to do that in a sustainable way with mitigation actions, mainly in the main sectors, the main sources of emissions that are the energy sector. So we are going to use the amount of hectares is going to be like the K indicator through the three conventions, but also the GHG emission, and trying to maintain that capacity to be a carbon sink.
Thank you very much, Melanie. So I think there's another question for you also in the chat. So could you please share what took in the beginning the initiative from government side, and what were convincing selling points to other actors and sectors?
Yes. Well, I think this happens in most of the countries of Latin America and the Caribbean, or like we have three different, it happens in every country. You have three teams. You have a team for biodiversity, you have a team of climate change, you have a team of desertification. That happens in each country, I think so. In the case of Panama, in the last 5 years, we have been working a lot in capacity building, trying to establish national experts inside the ministry. Most of the time, in most of the countries, like these plans and the different documents that you prepare, are not prepared by national experts. Like you pay for a consultancy that came and prepare a plan for the country that don't understand the national capacities, and most of the time is the technical team inside the minister that is just reviewing products and different giving the feedback to the international expert that know how NBSAP and NDCs and LDTN has been made, but didn't know about the national circumstances. So in climate change, we changed that scope. So we try to build national capacities. Right now, the GHG inventory, the NDC, the climate change scenarios are being developed by national experts. So now we are trying to replicate that in the biodiversity and the certification thing. So we know that it's more easy to establish a contract with a person just to gain some time. But in this case, we have been working through a process to establish that capacity. And now, with the leadership of the climate change direction, we are trying to coordinate all the process. So we are working with the projects that the different convention has with the country, like with the update, the preparation of the NBSAP, and we also have resources for the presentation of the LDN. So we are trying to share the experience that we have preparing the NDC, trying to develop the NBSAP and the LDN at home, not just someone coming to develop the new plans and the strategics that the ministry is the one in charge of the implementation. So what happens with the NBSAP and the LDN prepared presented in 2018 is that was prepared by consultancies. It was someone that came for a specific project, but at the end, the technical the technical team that was in the ministry didn't have the capacity to know how we implement the different actions that were in the plan. So now we are trying to update that different the new commitments to the reality that we have inside the ministry. So it came from a necessity to try to be more efficient and increase the coordination and the communication with the other two focal points of the two conventions. It's not have been easy. Even if we are in the same building, we are in 3 different floors, and it's not easy to set a meeting. Sometimes they don't answer the emails, but it's an experience that needs to be done. Like, you need to put everybody in the same table, identify what are you working on, which the different tools that you are working on. We identify that we prepare 4 tools that could be prepared in the same time. Like, we prepare the land degradation map, we prepare the forest map. We also prepare something that we call mapathon, that is the exercise when we gather all the information that we need to estimate the emission of the LULUCF sector and the GH inventory that is made with satellitized images. So you said a lot of people trying to interpret the different land use. So we could do that in the same time, but right now it's being prepared by the 3 directions in 3 moments of the year, and it's not something that is really cheap. So you need to invest a lot of things to put everybody and set the different softwares that you need to do. So now we are trying even to change that. So it has not been easy, but we are trying to do our best.
Thank you very much, Melanie. So I think we can take 2 more questions. I can see in the chat. So the first one is in the context of NBSAP development and implementation, page 15 and 19 of our global biodiversity framework. How can countries strategically leverage climate finance mechanism and adapt them to support biodiversity financing needs? So this is the first question. And I see another question for Fernanda. So would you evaluate proposals about biodiversity? Would you also support proposals that have less biodiversity outcomes, but good outcomes in terms of adaptation and reducing desertification? So maybe we can take those 2 questions and then move on to the last part of our webinar.
Yes, thank you, Stephanie. Yes, what we're seeing in the case of financing solutions, so an important thing to consider is we don't provide finance for countries. We help countries through capacity building and assessments to come up with their biodiversity finance plans and mobilize their own resources. So in this case, what we're seeing is that there is a lot of intersection within climate change and biodiversity within the financing solutions. For example, many countries have developed green bonds that are usually more focused on climate, but you can integrate a few criteria or components that also address biodiversity or hit adaptation targets. So it really depends on what the problems are at a country level and how you tailor the financing solution to meet these problems. So I think that's covering the first question. And for the second question, I think it goes among the same line. The example I was referring to about harmful subsidies also hits many goals. Even though it can have, the problem can be more focused on climate or adaptation or biodiversity, it can hit more outcomes. Another example that Ludwig was also touching upon, the conservation trust funds. Many conservation trust funds, and it's the case of a conservation trust fund in Mexico, use the climate change agenda to leverage financing for climate change projects within protected areas. So I really believe it has to do a lot with what the problem is and how you're framing it for a specific financing solution. Also, if you are developing proposals for GEF, GCF, it can be a very similar problem or the same problem. You just have to tailor the narrative and the indicators and the impact to the programmatic approach of the fund you're applying to. So I think this is a way that you can find many synergies within the 3 convention goals. Over.
Thank you very much for this, Fernanda. So being very mindful of time, so I think we're going to close the question and answer session. It has been very insightful, lots of interesting questions. And as mentioned earlier, all the presentations will be on our event page. And don't hesitate, if you want to ask further questions, just put down your email address in the chat and our expert will likely get back to you later on. So now I would like to give the floor back to Ludwig, who had an interesting session on a little quiz, actually, for us. Ludwig.
Thank you very much, Stefania. And maybe just before the quiz, I'd like to quickly react to the last comments, in particular, or questions on the connections between climate finance and biodiversity finance. You'll find on the webpage of the Joint Capacity Building Program, the second webinar we had actually as part of the series was addressing the topic of joint project design and resource mobilization for synergy. So you'll find some key messages on that topic. On the topic related to the role of indigenous people and local communities, we have also a webinar. Our third webinar was actually addressing the importance of local knowledge and indigenous knowledge for synergies. So there also you can find more information. We've got info briefs on those topics as well that you can find on the page. And on the great question from Joseph as well, great to see you, dear Joseph, on the topics of the metrics for impact finance. There as well, there is a lot of work to be done, to align the LDN metrics, the integration of biodiversity and climate metrics as well for impact investors. If some of you are working on this topic, please reach out. That's a very important one for the future. So now let me introduce a few questions to you. And I hope you can see my screen. Let me know otherwise. So the first question of the quiz is, when evaluating an NBSAP through the lens of Rio Convention synergies, which criterion is essential for assessing interconvention coherence? Is it the number of interministerial meetings held? Is it the country's ratification status of all 3 conventions? Or is it the explicit integration of co-benefits between biodiversity, climate, land degradation, and strategic objectives? Please don't hesitate to share your answer in the chat, and I'll give you the answer for the sake of time. It's, of course, response C. And the second question is, what is a good practice to ensure that NBSAPs effectively integrate the objectives of the UNFCCC and UNCCD without compromising biodiversity conservation? Is it prioritizing fast-growing monocultures in restoration programs or applying a landscape approach in territorial action plans to maximize biodiversity, climate, land co-benefits? Or is it about centralizing all management decisions within the forest administration? And the response is B. Let's think about the landscape approach actually as a key approach to build synergies at different levels. Third question is about, in a synergetic integration approach, which methodological tool can be used to identify co-benefits and trade-offs across the objectives of the CBD, UNFCCC, and UNCCD? Is it A, to apply a multi-criteria analysis, MCA, applied to environmental planning, or B, to work with the Environmental Performance Index, or conduct participatory mapping of protected areas? And for those who have applied already the multi-criteria analysis, you'll know that it can be a great tool, and also a tool very relevant to include the priorities and the voice of local communities and indigenous people in decision-making across the conventions, building synergies, and addressing trade-offs. So very important tool. Last question for you. What are options to strengthen synergies in the spending modalities of a conservation trust fund? Is it A, designing a window for integrated projects within those trust funds? Is it to separate clearly the windows for land, climate, and biodiversity, or providing a reward or incentive for synergistic projects? And there, I think we can have two answers, including rewarding, incentivizing synergistic projects. And with that, I'd like just to re-emphasize that you can find all the information about the program on the Capacity Building Program webpage. Thank you very much, and back to you, dear Stefania.
Thank you very much, Ludwig. So to conclude our session, I would like to invite Eri Tamale from the CBD Secretariat, who has joined us for a few words.
Thank you so much, Stefania, and good afternoon, good morning, colleagues, and those who have attended this webinar. I think you will agree with me that this has been very resourceful for all of us. Even those of us that have been in this for quite some time, there's always something new to learn. I've really enjoyed some of the case studies that have been presented today. There are many lessons that we need to draw on and apply in our situations, and we should take advantage of these opportunities to actually share, but also learn. And as indicated in the concept note for this webinar, the 3 Rio Conventions actually shared related objectives, and all these are critical for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. And the time is now and not later for us to continue building these synergies and move beyond the conceptual and policy discourses we've had over the past few years and get more into the practical on-ground actions that would help to address the issues of climate change, biodiversity loss, and degradation in a manner that is integrated, but also in a manner that would allow us to leverage the multiple benefits that come with working together. And I think we've had a presentation today, some of the presentations today, talking about the advantages we get in terms of mobilizing resources and investing those resources jointly, where the benefits we get by doing that higher, greater than what we would be gaining by investing individually. And also we've had from the presentations opportunities that come with working together with for those that now we are revising the NBSAPs and updating the NBSAPs to align them with the global, the coming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, but also the opportunities that come with also the ongoing update of the NDCs and other planning processes at the national level. So we need to leverage all these deliberately and not by chance or by omission. We really need to plan ahead and deliberately integrate this. And at the national level, with the UN country teams now working together to bring together different issues, aligning them with the Sustainable Development Goals, I think there are many opportunities and goodwill that would allow us to achieve more by working together than working individually. And also there are many opportunities that that we have in terms of initiatives like the NDC partnership, in the SAP Accelerator Partnership, and also the LDN target setting programs. All these working together at the national level and at the local level, I think we can achieve way more than what we would achieve through these individual programs. And this particular program, on joint capacity building program that we are implementing right now, provides us a good platform for actually looking at all these opportunities and leveraging them to achieve the respective objectives and targets that we have under our different conventions. So let's use these opportunities to learn. Let's use these opportunities to leverage resources. Let's use these opportunities to collaborate and achieve more than what we would have achieved. So thank you so much once again. Thank you, Ludwig and the team, and my colleague, our colleagues at the other secretariats for working together. And I think with continuing to do this, we'll be able to achieve more and be able to have more impact in the coming years. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Eric. So we come to the end of our webinar. So as we wrapped up, a very heartfelt thanks to all of you, all of our speakers and panelists for sharing such rich insights and experiences. And today's discussion have highlighted how building synergies across the Rio Convention, particularly through NBSAPs, can unlock transformative potential for joint action and investment. So to all our participants, thank you very much for your active engagement and presence. And we hope to see you at our next webinar, which will be on how to build synergies in land degradation neutrality targets. So stay tuned via our social medias, our newsletters, and now the UNFCCC event page for more updates. And finally, sincere thanks to our colleagues from the UNFCCC, CBD, and UNCCD secretariats for their continued support and collaboration in driving this joint capacity building program forward. Thank you all once again. Have a wonderful evening. Have a wonderful day wherever you're joining us from. So goodbye, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
See you
Bye-bye.
soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.